There we go.
Cool. All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Shruti here. I'll go ahead and quickly introduce our topic for the day and our speaker. So, Agile Mindset, right, and why it matters. Um, us as Scrum Masters and coaches, we tend to focus on training our teams on processes and tools. Um, and it's kind of that's the easier part, right? How do we coach someone on having an agile mindset? So in today's presentation, David will be walking us through an interactive discussion, and will help guide us on approaches that we can take to introduce agile mindset to our teams and our organizations. So David is an agile coach with over 25 years of experience in the industry. He's a passionate agilist and is part of the Heart of Agile Denver, Heart of Agile movement. Blah. He is the founder and co-host of Heart of Agile Boulder Meetup, and they're recently now part of the Agile Denver umbrella. So woohoo! He currently works at Xero, which is a New Zealand-based cloud accounting software company with its headquarters in Denver, the North American headquarters in Denver. Please join me in welcoming David. David, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Super excited to be here and talking about the Agile mindset. Just want to give the caveat that today is the first time I'm actually presenting this one, so hopefully it goes smoothly. But want to talk first about why the Agile mindset is important, and then we'll get into some of the tools that might be useful in helping your company or the teams that you're working with adopt more of an Agile mindset. And then at the end, I have a tool that we created at Xero to help teams walk through their mindset and the way they work to determine whether they should work in a more Scrum or more Kanban way, and want to just give a quick demonstration of that as well. So that is what we're going for, and I will start sharing my screen. Give me just a second. And let me know if you are seeing the presentation.
Yep.
Awesome. At Xero, we use Google Meet, so Zoom is a little bit different for me, so just making sure I get reacclimated to it. Cool. All right, so Agile Mindset, why it matters. Strangely enough for this conversation, I'm going to start with the topic of frameworks. If you've been in the business of doing Agile work for very long, you have heard people refer to Scrum and Agile interchangeably. Happens all the time. Scrum, of course, is a framework, not equivalent to Agile, but it is an Agile framework. This happens a lot because a lot of people equate the tools and the frameworks to the mindset, and they're really very different. So I wanted to get into that a little bit. So with the frameworks, we have things like I mentioned, we have Scrum, there's Kanban, and SAFe. Those are probably three of the most popular ones. Of course, there are others like XP and other different variants of it out there. And all of these are great tools for implementing an Agile process within your organization. But if you try to implement an Agile process without the mindset, you start running into a lot of trouble. So question, what do Agile frameworks have in common? Anybody have an answer for that? I cannot see if people have their hands raised. Jack, I can see you on the screen, so I'm going to call on you.
There's fundamental principles of Agile that are shared across all of the frameworks, right? There's like 4 tenets or something like that. I could be wrong though.
All right, that may
The
be.
manifesto. That's what I was trying to think of.
Well, where I was going with this and thinking is following rules. There's
Yeah.
a lot of rules to the frameworks. And you can implement Scrum or Kanban or SAFe without people having an agile mindset. And you can follow the rules that are in the Scrum guide or on various blogs or different places. And you can possibly even improve the way your team is working a little bit, but you're not going to get the maximum value out of it without the agile mindset. And I want to give some examples because following the rules does not equal winning. And I'm going to use a quick analogy from the sporting world to give a little background on me. I grew up in Atlanta, moved out here to Denver about 3 years ago, and I'm an avid sports fan. So most Atlanta sports, professional sports teams would be the teams that I follow. And a few years ago, the Atlanta Hawks drafted this guy. And if you're not familiar with him, his name is Josh Smith. He had all the talent in the world to be an NBA superstar. Everything you needed. He was an amazing talent, but he was not a team player. And he would go out and he followed the rules of basketball, but not being a team player and not following the mindset that the team had around how to succeed. The team struggled very, very much during the years that he was with them. He ended up getting traded to other teams and then ended up, I think, finishing his career out over in Europe. It was a real disappointment to me based on the talent that he had, that's the way things went. But we see this in software teams all the time. You'll have a superstar, rock star developer come in the team that doesn't have that team mentality, and it can really sabotage what's going on with the teams. I'll give a couple of examples. You might have seen where someone comes in and during sprint planning, they put their name on 3 of the cards immediately because those are the ones that they want to pick up and work on. Doesn't matter what the priority of the items are. It doesn't matter if someone else might be a better fit to work on them. Those are the ones they want, so they go on and just grab them. And if someone else grabs them, you better watch out because they're going to have something to say about it. Or you might have the guy that he's a great developer, but when he's working on a story and he sees code that needs to be refactored around it, he doesn't bring it up to the team or to the product owner. He goes into a hole for 3 weeks, fixes all of that code, does all of that refactoring, and then he reemerges with all of this refactored code, a huge pull request to be approved, and may not have even addressed the main point of the story. I'm not saying I've ever seen this happen before, but these might be examples from my past. So those are examples of not having the agile mindset and working in a software team. And I'm sure several of you have had similar experiences. You know the whole saying that there's no I in team. Well, there is for people who don't have that team and that agile mindset. So what I would like to do right now is have a quick breakout session. I think, Shruti, you have the breakout rooms set up.
We'll just create them
Okay.
now, David. Yeah.
And we'll give about 5 minutes for you all to, in your breakout rooms, share some quick examples of where you have seen people who didn't have the agile mindset that have sabotaged a team, or even if it's at a higher level, maybe an organization in their attempt to work in an agile way. And then when we come back, we'll have a few people share those out.
Awesome.
Hey, David, I'm going to set up 5 rooms, 5 participants per room, and you're just going to randomly be shoved over there in 3, 2, 1.
Ooh, there you go. That was quick, Lori.
Okay. How much time did we want to give on that? Couple of minutes. All right, well, I'm glad. Should everybody coming back in about 10 seconds.
Sounds good.
Their team was not looking good under Scrum.
Welcome back, everybody.
Woohoo.
Yeah, welcome back. So do we have any volunteers? If you are willing to share some examples, if you can just raise your hand on Zoom, we will call on you to give us some examples. While we're waiting, I will share that one person in our group said that they just had this very similar experience to what I shared with someone on the last day of the sprint checking in some code. Arvin, I see your hand. So if you can unmute.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as someone fairly new on the team, I guess overambitious. I mean, eventually it was great code, but it was just too much on the last day of the sprint to check in, impossible to review and to package. So yeah, we had to go back and we broke into a very small piece and then to deliver it on the next after that. And then the person, delivered, more consistently. And yeah, it was a fairly new team too. So it was a learning curve for the whole team.
Well, hopefully it was a good learning experience and they were able to apply that. They'll be able to apply that going forward. Can we get one more example? Shruti.
Yes, I think one thing that all of us agreed upon in our breakout room was around the team being, focused only on specific features or specific areas of expertise, and them kind of gravitating towards picking up only those tasks rather than cross-training and, having that learning mindset, right? So, because you don't want to have bottlenecks on your team. So I think that's something that we all agreed upon, that we've seen that in some shape or form in all of our teams, and trying to coach leadership, stakeholders, as well as the team on how do we break away from that mindset has always, I think it's a challenge that we've all faced. So.
Yeah, that's a great example. And yeah, I agree. That's a very common issue as well.
Yeah.
All right. For the sake of time, we'll go on and move forward. I will start sharing my screen again. All right. So off-the-shelf solutions. Really, all frameworks are off-the-shelf solutions that they hope will meet most of your needs. But the problem is a lot of people take these frameworks as rules that they have to follow. And people don't adapt them for their own needs and their own purposes that fit their culture and the way they work. And that's where I see a lot of people running into problems, because you've got things like Scrum, you've got the Scrum guide. It's very detailed. It can tell you, actually, I think they've done a good job in the last few years of revamping it to where it actually does promote a little bit more configuration of it and a little bit more leniency in the way you work with it. SAFe is a good example of one that just in first glance, because there's so much to it, it's very prescriptive looking, like it's telling you you've got to do all of these things in order to succeed. But I've also seen where if you aren't willing to adapt that, it can really get bogged down in trying to follow those rules instead of working in a way that's really going to help and benefit your company and your teams. So try to start shifting your mindset to frameworks or tools that are not meant to be off-the-shelf solutions implemented exactly the way they're laid out, but that they're meant to be tweaked and fit to the needs of your company. They're just a tool in your toolbox. And that's the way I approach all of my coaching engagements, is using these frameworks as tools in my toolbox, along with a lot of the other tools that are out there. And I'll be sharing some of those here in a minute. But getting to mindset and the Agile mindset. So there's two definitions of mindset that I found. One is a mental attitude or inclination, and the other is a fixed state of mind. And when I'm talking about the Agile mindset, I'm definitely talking about the first one. It's your mental attitude and inclination. We don't want a fixed state of mind. Speaking of that, there's a great book called Mindset, and it talks about the difference between a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And if you have never read this book, it's an awesome book for anyone in software development, anyone in management, anyone in any type of leadership position. It's really about how to promote and help people get into that growth mindset, which the growth mindset really aligns with the Agile mindset, because you're always testing, learning, refining, trying to come up with better ways to work. So we don't want to promote that fixed mindset. So there'll be some more. I've got some links at the end of the presentation that point to a lot of resources. So this is one of those that's on there. So the Agile Manifesto. As you all know, 20 years ago, the Agile Manifesto was written, and it says we are uncovering better ways of developing software. It doesn't say we have uncovered. It's an ongoing process, and we will never have uncovered the best way to do software development, because there is no single best way to do it. It's going to be different for every company, every situation. I would say even every team within every company. There needs to be little differences in the way you approach it to meet the needs of that team, the personalities on the team, the kind of work that you're doing. So even the Agile Manifesto has that growth mindset kind of built into it. And as you can see, there are no frameworks or ways of doing Agile that are laid out in the Agile Manifesto. And again, I am not against frameworks. I think they're amazing tools, and especially being able to piece them apart and use those pieces of them as tools is absolutely amazing. But I just really want to emphasize, don't think of the framework as the Agile mindset. Heart of Agile. Shruti, when she was introducing me, mentioned the Heart of Agile movement that I'm involved with and the Heart of Agile meetup that I run. Heart of Agile was started in 2014 by Alistair Coburn, who was one of the original writers of the Agile Manifesto, one of the contributors to that. And he felt that the Agile community was kind of getting away from the original intent of the manifesto and wanted to figure out a way to kind of revitalize it, to strip it down and make it as simple as possible so that people really did start paying attention to the mindset over the tools and the practices. So this is what he came up with: 4 simple words: collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. And at a very basic level, if you're doing these 4 things, you're working in an Agile way. In the Heart of Agile community, we also add to this that the middle of the heart of Agile is humanity with dialogue and openness. And if you have all of those elements, then you can have a really successful Agile implementation, even if you're not using a framework. And we have seen a lot of companies succeed without having any kind of official formal framework that they're utilizing, but just utilizing these concepts and figuring out how to apply the thinking around how can we collaborate better? How can we deliver better? How can we get better at reflecting on what we've been doing and then leveraging all of those things to improve the way we work? So Heart of Agile is something that I use with my teams. It's not something that Xero endorses specifically, but it's a tool that I use to explain the Agile mindset and to help people in a very simple way be introduced to what kind of thinking that we're looking for when we're working in an Agile way. Similarly, one that I'm not as involved with, Modern Agile, another very similar movement. 4 aspects to this one as well: make people awesome, deliver value continuously, make safety a prerequisite, experiment and learn rapidly. Some similarities to Heart of Agile, some differences, but both of them are promoting the Agile mindset in just slightly different ways. And there are times where this would be a great tool to use to introduce that Agile mindset in the same way I do with the Heart of Agile. You can talk people through it and figure out, like, as a team, how do we want to show up? I actually, when I do team kickoffs, leverage the Heart of Agile. Modern Agile could be used in very much the same way, where I do an exercise to have them like put stickies on a Miro board for each of those sections saying, how do we want the team to show up in a collaborative way? What behaviors and mindsets do we want to see? Same thing for deliver, reflect, and improve. And it almost becomes a team working agreement because it's talking about those mindsets and behaviors that we want to see. So that's one tool that you can use. Some companies are not really open to bringing in some of these extra things from the outside, like a Heart of Agile or a Modern Agile, like, oh, that's just too much to introduce. We're already doing an Agile transformation, or already trying to get people to work in an Agile way, and we have to follow the Scrum rules, and we have all this stuff going on. Like, we don't want to take on something else and do that cognitive overload. Well, you can also develop your own Agile principles to promote Agile thinking. And at Xero, we've done that as well. Our head of our product organization and the head of our technology part of the organization got together and came up with 6 principles for building software. Fall in love with the customer problem, test, learn, refine. Product is a team sport. Deliver seamless experiences. Prioritize courageously. Build things that thrive. And all of our coaches and Scrum Masters, we call them Agile Team Facilitators just to not make it specific to Scrum. But all of our coaches, whether it's at the team level or at the more at the manager level and up, we know these principles. We use these principles when we see teams acting in a way that exemplifies these principles. We call them out and we say, hey, that sounds like you're testing, learning, and refining. That's awesome. Keep working on that. Or someone brings up, hey, we need to go collaborate with this other team to make sure that we're delivering software that's working in the same way. Like, we saw that this feature we're building may be a little bit different, have a different look than the way this other team's feature looks. We need to collaborate with them to make sure that everything lines up for the customer. That's delivering seamless experiences. And it just promotes that Agile mindset in a slightly different way that's specific to the culture that Xero is wanting to build. So I wanted to present this as an example of, if your company doesn't have any kind of principles for Agile thinking, or is resistant to using something like the Heart of Agile or Modern Agile, take a chance and maybe come up with some principles of your own that you can leverage to get common language for your teams to use to build that mindset. Building software is a team sport. It does take people with different mindsets from different backgrounds. We value diversity of thought. If everybody thinks the same way, we're not going to come up with creative, innovative solutions that are going to meet our customers' needs. So creating this Agile mindset, that's why it's so important because we need everybody to be thinking in similar ways in terms of agile thinking, but bringing all of their experience from their varied backgrounds together in order to be able to really deliver a valuable experience. A great visual for that is build your teams with a foundation of an agile mindset. Tools like frameworks can be put on top of that agile mindset, and then have the small little practices that the team does, whether it's that they're doing story points via Fibonacci sequence or t-shirt sizing, or maybe they're doing no estimates. Those are the little practices that are tied into the frameworks. And if you can build those on the agile mindset, then your teams will be set up for success. Like I said, I've got this set of resources here, all of these tied to the slides that were mentioned before, and I will create a PDF of this and send it for them to send out to everyone who attended the meetup so that you all can do this. I did put Zero's job site on here too. We're always hiring. So if you're looking for a role, feel free to check us out. It's an amazing place to work. Just my little pitch. I also put my LinkedIn profile on here. Would love to connect with any of you. Always looking to have other Agilists in my network. So that's it for my presentation on the slide aspect.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, you presented a few alternate frameworks for us to think about. And I like this idea because it's really exciting to me to think that we're living in a time and a culture where we can actually build our own structures and our own hierarchies and our own constructs around frameworks for Agile, picking and choosing a lot of the great foundational work and then also converting that so that it's effective in modern times. Or, we've seen a lot of chaos. We've seen a lot of complexity that we never experienced before. And some of those old constructs and frameworks were not successful. They failed us. So I'd love to see, what's emerging from all of that. And I guess I would love to know if there's anybody on the call that has experienced something outside of the traditional, I would say, like maybe SAFe or Scrum, or something that has worked for them or that they are interested in trying.
While we're waiting, I can actually share one that one of my teams is just getting ready to start exploring. We have not used it before, but it's a thing called Shape Up. It was created by Basecamp, and it is an agile way of working. I have a very high level understanding of it because we are literally just getting started looking at it. But it looks like it's kind of a mashup of XP and Scrum with 6-week sprints, and then having a week or two in between each sprint to do some refactoring, deal with bugs, and then figure out what the next right thing to build is. And one of the ideas is giving a 6-week sprint gives you enough time to really deliver something with value to it that can be utilized immediately by the customer, where 1 and 2 week sprints wasn't working for them at Basecamp. And so they landed on doing 6-week sprints. There's a lot more that goes into it. They don't worry about story sizes. They can have an entire team working on one story for the entire 6 weeks. But the biggest thing is making sure that it's continuing to move forward. If anything doesn't work for you, you split that out into its own story to do some discovery on and possibly even de-scope. So that's one example that I've seen recently that is a little outside the box, but we're definitely going to explore it and see if it's a tool we can use.
That is pretty interesting. I just posted a link to Basecamp's website and has a little information about that framework.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Has anybody else experienced anything different outside of the box, maybe? I can think of a couple of things that I've run across recently. And first of all, we said the Agile Manifesto is 20 years old, right? So if something is agile, usually means that we can change it quickly. We can adapt it quickly. And that's maybe not happening. So I've seen Agile 2.0 as an alternate solution, which is building off, again, the same framework, but kind of taking it in a different direction. And then the other one I've heard of is called Total Flow systems. And so we're saying that, everything that Agile and Scrum was built off was mainly coming from manufacturing, like the Toyota production systems. Back in those days, if you didn't do the things that you were supposed to do on the line, you could really potentially mess some stuff up, like hurt people from a, machine blowing up, or, not delivering the right kind of car parts, or, quality issues with things that will really impact people in a physical way. But we're in a different environment where I think that we need to kind of re-examine some of those rules and figure out flexibility and really focus, rather than on structure, maybe on flow and how we increase flow, and we improve on that to get us to continuous integration and deploy on demand. So yeah, there's a few things out there that I think are really cool. And I love the fact that, again, that like we're in a place now where we can really shape how that's going to look. I would say don't be afraid to experiment and pitch it out to your leadership if they're a little bit afraid, because I think everybody's looking for ways to really kind of change it up and be more effective.
That's awesome, Laurie. Can you share those links out in the chat as well?
Oh, I sure will.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And I think so, Laurie, like based on your experience, like how have you explored these new frameworks? And also, I think that's a question to David too. I mean, is it through Agile blogs? Is that how you've come across these frameworks? Just kind of like, what's the thought process behind hunting down for a new framework?
I know for me, I am always searching LinkedIn for articles, or medium.com, looking at articles there, just looking for ideas of what people are doing and how they're doing things differently. I learned about ShapeUp, actually. One of my engineering managers came to me with that one and said that he wanted to try it out. So that's the reason I found out about it and said, cool, let's experiment and give it a try. But yeah, I'm always looking through blogs and searching to find these different ways of doing things.
That is awesome.
Yeah, for me, I was looking for a connection to modern design thinking, and also kind of like common methods for us to, problem solve. I really felt like there was nothing for me to look at that was going to help me with COVID stuff. That's how it started for me. I was like, what's new? What are people doing? What have they learned from this experience where we had to kind of drop everything and hope that we could deal with stuff that we didn't have any basis for, like we didn't know how it was going to work. We didn't have solutions already done. We didn't have, a historical kind of like reference for how we were going to fix stuff that was broken due to this crisis. And that's how I came across the flow system. So I will put that in here as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
That
I hadn't heard
awesome.
of the flow system, so I'm looking forward to diving
Ooh,
into that one.
it's neat, but it might blow your mind a little bit. So I'm warning you now.
I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
That's the next thing we're going to experiment, I guess, with our teams. That is awesome. David and Laurie, thanks for sharing that with us. David, one more question before we dive into the tools demo. So you said at Xero, your team, the product and technology team, came up with Agile principles that worked for them, right?
Yes.
How did you guys go about that process? Like, because it's pretty groundbreaking in a way, right? To say there are these people who've thought through this approach for years, and this is what they came up with. These are the Agile principles, 12 of them. But how did we said, okay, we're going to do our own thing. What was the process?
So Zero is a little bit of a different animal company-wise than I've ever experienced before. It's a very human-centered mindset from the top down. Very much in tune with the way people work, their thinking, their feelings, and how that affects the work that we do. And it's one of the things that attracted me to the company, and it has more than lived up to what I thought it was going to be. And this is just an example, because when I say head of product and head of technology, these are basically the executive vice presidents of those verticals that got together and said, hey, our company is scaling quickly, we're really growing, and we want to make sure that we're maintaining the culture that we've built and the way of developing software that we've built. What are some very simple principles that we can put out there for people to latch onto that fit our culture and can create common language so that we're all talking the same way? And that, to me, the amazing part is it didn't take coaches going to them saying, hey, we need to create this. They saw the need for it themselves. So unfortunately, I can't tell you how to create that synergy.
That's
but
awesome.
What I can tell you is you can leverage that story to take to your own company to say, hey, there's this other company out there that did this, and it's created a cohesiveness in the way they talk across a global company. And it's a company that's, again, like I said, scaling very quickly. And having these common languages makes it so much easier to scale and to be able to replicate what we're doing with the new teams that we spin up, because we have that common framework or language to build off of.
That is awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a story that we can share, surprisingly. It's an odd one, but a really interesting one for sure.
Yeah, and I wish I could give you tips on how to get your leaders into that mindset. I'm sure that I could attempt it and might have success with it, but here I didn't even have the experience or the chance to have the experience because they were already doing it themselves.
That is awesome. Yeah. Someday, right?
Yeah. I guess it's a good problem to have.
Right, absolutely.
All right, so are we ready to jump into the tool?
Yes.
Yep.
Interactive.
Yes,
It
this
is.
one is definitely going to be interactive. I'm actually going to need a volunteer, somebody. Ideally, it would be someone who may be fairly new working with their team, or their team is trying to figure out the best way for them to work. Like if you're trying to decide between Scrum and Kanban, if you're in that type of a situation. If we don't have someone in that situation, like just someone who's been working with their team for a while and knows the way their team works and would be interested in seeing if this tool lines up with the way your team is already working. I'll share my screen and kind of explain the tool a little bit and then see if we have any volunteers for it. So
Yeah, the willing victim, volunteer might want to know
what they're getting into.
Yeah, so really if you're, kind of considering maybe Scrum isn't working for your team, or maybe their structure or the type of work that they're doing just would be better served by a different Agile model or framework. And what are some of the questions that you would ask in order to drive you to one type of framework over another?
Absolutely. And this one, the quick background on it, I had a team that is not part of the product delivery team. They're one of our technology teams. This particular team serves requests from internal teams to work on database things or just different stuff on the back end, server setups, that kind of stuff. And they were just wanting me to help them figure out like what is the best way for them to take an agile approach to the way they were working, because they weren't working in a very agile way. And as I was talking to them, I was like, oh yeah, a choose your own adventure kind of game would be kind of cool. And they're like, yeah, would you build that for us? I'm like, sure. And so we did. So this is a Miro board. If you've never used Miro before, fun little tool. I built this out with a facilitator guide. So if you're running the session, it kind of gives you some tips based on some of our experiences we've had using this tool. But it starts off, I'm going to zoom out so you can see the entire thing. So series of questions. These clouds are covering up the path a little bit, but you start with this first one, and I'll zoom in. And you have your virtual Agile coach. He might look a little bit familiar to you. You start off with, you're on an Agile team that's wanting to work in a more Agile way. As an Agile coach that your team has brought in to help you on your journey, I want to learn a bit more about how you work. How long has this team been working together? And then the team will choose A or B, and then we just follow the colored line to the next cloud, and then that's the cloud that we'll uncover for the next question. And then we do that all the way through, and at the end, there will be little numbers in each of the clouds. We'll add up those numbers, and it will help inform us which of the frameworks might be a better fit for you to start with. And I'll explain that more once we get to the end. But do I have any willing volunteers for this exercise?
Yeah, who wants to give it a shot?
You have no commitment that you'll actually take it back to your team and make them do this. All right, Mike.
There's no wrong answers.
You just have to answer questions.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, it's just answering the questions. Okay. Just so, all right, Mike, think about a team that you work with and just answer the questions all the way through according to that team. And we'll just do this as a quick example. All right, so is the team that you're thinking of a newly formed team, or is it a team that's been working together for a while?
I believe they're closer to B.
Okay, so B. So we will uncover that one. All right, great. A team that's familiar with each other and know how you work together can generally be more flexible in the way they work. That gives us more options. But to better determine how to proceed, tell me about the type of work you do. Is the majority of the work focused on a product that the team owns? Do they work on various features that are brought to them, or are they a team that works on services and responds to requests?
I'm thinking of a DevOps team that's trying to figure out what they're doing. So they're closer to C.
Okay.
I mean, they do have elements of A and B, but mostly C.
And that's a great example. I have a lot of teams that'll come and they're like, well, we have a little bit of a mix of these. And the advice I'll give is which one you have the most of is the one you should choose for this. So based on your answer here, we'll go with C, which actually skips a question for us and takes us down here. All right, it sounds like you're a service team. These types of teams tend to have a little more unpredictability than product-focused teams. And while that adds some complexity, it also helps clarify some of the practices that may help you. Do you have a product owner that works with your team to help prioritize your work?
Let's see. No, even though I tell them they need one. So C.
All right, C it is.
They really do need one.
Okay, not having a product owner can be challenging. It requires intentional collaboration to ensure the entire team understands the work to be done as well as the priorities of the work. Another challenge some teams face is dependencies on other teams or other teams being dependent on you. Does your team have any known dependencies on other teams?
Definitely A, yes they do. I love your face in that cloud, by the way.
Thank you.
Whose face is that there?
I don't know. I just picked a random.
It really brings the whole thing to life.
Thank you. Cool. All right. So knowing you have dependencies is half the battle. The other half is communicating, collaborating, and managing risk. So let's look at some other factors that can impact how you work. Which of the following most closely describes how you deliver your work? A fixed schedule, so you have a set deadline to complete your work by, or a fixed scope. You know exactly what you need to deliver regardless of how long it takes. While Mike's thinking about this, I'm going to just point out a lot of teams struggle with this question because they feel like they have a mix of both, or that they, and some teams do have a fixed schedule and a fixed scope, which is an issue. But if that's the case, I ask them, which one is more important? If you had to give on one of them, which one would you give on? And then we would choose the other answer.
Oh, I hate to say it, but it would best behoove them. It is pretty, it is both. Most of their work, even though they're a service team, really is closer to A.
A. All right.
A lot of this, at least the stuff they have lately. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Just so you know, too, one of the reasons I built the tool this way is because it forces conversation, and the conversations the team have going through this, trying to decide which answer to go through, is almost more important, if not all completely more important, than the tool's result itself. So that's part of why we built it the way we built it. All right, so we went with answer A. All right, having a fixed schedule can add pressure to a team and requires transparency if the work falls behind schedule. Some requirements may have to be removed to reduce the work in order to hit your deadline. Two advantages you can get from Agile are being able to learn as you go and adjust how you're working, how much you need to deliver, and even what you're delivering. And B, being able to deliver value to customers more quickly. Which of these would you say your team would say is more important for the work you're doing? Learning as you go or speed of delivery? This is another one of those answers that requires debate.
Yeah. Answering for the team, speed of delivery. As a Scrum Master, learning as they go.
All right.
Go with B.
We'll go with B. All right. Being able to deliver value quickly is a great benefit of working in an Agile way, but don't forget to pause and reflect occasionally to ensure you're building the right things in the right ways. Now consider these two options and tell me which is more important to your customers. And in this, I'm going to call out your customers may be internal customers or external customers. Think about who is the customer for your team. Being predictable in your delivery or being flexible in adjusting to scope and priority?
Absolutely.
A?
Predictability, yeah.
Being predictable and agile takes balance. The further out you're predicting, the less predictable you can be. But there are tools that allow you to do so. An Agile team facilitator, this is something that, again, going back to the zero language, an Agile team facilitator or product delivery coach should be able to help you with this. And then the way your team is structured can be a determining factor in your Agile approach. Which of these best describe the makeup of your team? It's a cross-functional team of specialists or a team of generalists?
They are specialists. I want them to be generalists. Hey.
All right. So it's a cross-functional team of specialists. Just going to say, based on your answer there and the way you answered that, sometimes having a team of specialists isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world.
True. This team, they could use more than one single thread on every, one person goes on vacation.
Yes,
Stops.
Totally get that. You don't want single points of failure. All right. Cross-functional teams can be strong performing teams as you get a good diversity of thought and perspectives. However, there's often a single point of failure if all the team members are specialists. One way to mitigate this risk is to pair and cross-train so that others are familiar with every role. Starting your Agile journey can take time as you will be constantly learning and needing to adjust. Will you have the support of an Agile specialist? So that would be an Agile coach or a Scrum Master.
I want them to have, I was brought in to try to help them get them on their way and then exit. But, you know, I would support, I'm going to tell them they need someone. So let's say yes.
All right, we'll say yes to that one. Excellent. Having an Agile specialist can make your journey a lot easier. But remember, they still need you to be engaged in the decisions your team makes on how you work. They are only there to guide you. And ideally, they're there to help you become self-sufficient so they can move on and help other teams. All right, one last question. Which of the following would you say motivates this team the most? Time constraints or efficiency? So this is about the motivation of the team as a whole. Which of those motivates them more? I love your response to that.
They get beat down by the time constraints. They love efficiency, but it's the time constraints that make the work happen.
All right.
Make the delivery happen.
Gotcha. All right. Well, many teams and people do better when they know they have time constraints on their work. It gives you a goal to shoot for and helps you know if you're on track. Having this preference can be a strong indicator of what you need to do or of what you need in order to do your best work. So great job making it through the adventure. So now we go back through the board and we need to count the numbers of blue and yellow numbers. I'm not going to read through all of this. I'm just going to kind of walk you through what it looks like. So let me go back through real quick and add everything up. I'm going to blue, green. All right. So let me go through. So I've got one blue, one yellow. I've got two yellow, two more yellow. I see a trend up to blue, two more blue. I'm seeing another trend, two more yellow, blue. This is a unique path I've never taken through this board before, so this is kind of fun. All right, one blue, two yellow, and at the end, two blue. Interesting. All right, so this did not turn out the way I expected it to. All right, so so it said if blue is the higher number, then Scrum would be a good place for the team to start. If yellow is higher, Kanban might be best. In this case, we had 10 blue and 9 yellow. So it's super close. But this is a great example. And I actually have had this type of result come up before. I actually had once where it came up dead even. In this case, what we would say is, all right, the team basically needs to work in a Scrum bond kind of way. We're going to have to mash the two up. But what our coaches have found is that going back through the board and looking at the way the team answered can help them figure out which elements of Scrum and which elements of Kanban can most help the team. Because the blue turned out higher, we would probably recommend in this case, if this was at 0, that you start with Scrum and then overlay Kanban policies and different types of tools on top of that. An example might be you start with maybe a 2-week Scrum, but put your WIP limits on some of the things, on some of the columns, like on the in progress column, so that you're forcing some of that collaboration, especially thinking about the team of specialists you have. Forcing people to pair so that they're learning each other's jobs would be one of the things I would take from the way the answers were given, that you could put it together. But yeah, it's a fascinating journey through this one. This was definitely different. Does this help you at all?
What's super funny, David, is I recommended Scrumban. I'm like, there's a weird mishmash that we can do it. I'm like, we need to do Kanban, but you have these projects, and there's a weird thing called Scrumban that we can try. It's difficult to get, but they've been doing it now for really short sprints. Basically Kanban, but with delivery time boxes. They're doing okay so far, and it's only been about a month and a half. So it's really funny that that's what your tool came up with.
Isn't it cool when the magic happens?
Yeah.
I'm just
Really
going to tell
crazy.
everybody on this team, thank you, Mike, for contributing, because people will often ask me, like, why should I care? Why should I go to meetups? This is the exact reason, because when I'm at work, I'm in my own bubble, my own domain, my own company, my own, things over and over again. When I come here, I get to see a different perspective, right? So Mike, you told us about a group that you were working with, and I will be honest with you, it sounded like you were describing a group that I work with too, almost to the exact, and so it's great so that we can see as coaches or scrum masters that no matter what industry you're in, no matter what domain you're working in, we often come across the same challenges, and to have a common set of tools or being able to, talk about what's worked and what's not worked is super valuable. So, this is a great place to have that exchange. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for stepping up and doing that. And it's been crazy as we've used this tool to see how closely, like every time I've done a demo like this, where I just have a random person, I don't know anything about their team, it's nailed it every time. And the coaches that we've had have an idea of what the team needs to do, and almost every time it's lined up with what they were asking for. I want to tell one quick story where a coach was trying to get his team to do Scrum. He thought Scrum was definitely the way they needed to go, but they wanted to do Kanban. It's that whole thing of the team thinks Kanban's got less overhead, it's going to be better for us, we want to try it out. So he took them through this. It very heavily pointed them to doing Scrum, but the team still wanted to try Kanban. And he was like, you know what? Let's do it. So they tried Kanban. He used the questions and the way they answered the questions to help him know, what are the things that are going to trip them up as they're doing Kanban. And he was able to kind of predict some of the issues they were going to have and work with them. And Kanban worked okay for them for a while, and they ended up switching back to Scrum. But we gave them the opportunity to experience it and try it. For most of our teams, what we've found is where the coach can go in and say, you need to do Scrum or you need to do Kanban. And the team's like, no, we want to do the other. But then we take them through the tool, and the tool tells them the same thing their coach was telling them. And then they're like, okay, well, we know we answered the questions and it ended up telling us that we need to do this. So we probably should just do what you're telling us to do. And so it's funny how the tool sometimes has more weight than the coach's opinion themselves.
I like that analogy.
Works.
Yeah, but it reminds me of those Facebook, surveys that you take that tells you what your personality type is based on colors or, what type of dogs you like.
It's
You
funny
never
you
think it's going to
mentioned that.
work, but it does work.
It's funny you mentioned that, because when I was creating this tool, I was really struggling with how to, I knew the format I wanted, the questions I wanted to ask, but I couldn't figure out how do I drive them to a solution and knowing which one to choose. And one of our team members brought up those polls on Facebook and the little quizzes she used to take in Teen Magazine or whatever. And she was like, it always had points that you add up and it tells you which. And that flipped the switch for me, where I was like, I know how to do it now.
Awesome.
So it was a collaborative effort to get to this.
All right. We should probably run to a couple of questions and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah. So David, have you used this with teams that are established and have been following a certain framework for a while, and then they're like, hey, let's see if this still works for us?
Yeah, the way we've used it with existing teams has been if they've been struggling to deliver, having issues with the way they're working, and they're just trying to figure out are we even doing the right thing? That's when we'll typically introduce it. If a team's doing well with Scrum and delivering on a regular basis, we aren't going to mess with it. But it's usually just with teams that are existing but struggling with their delivery that we would go through this just to double check, are we working in the right way?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Going back to your presentation on Agile Mindset, David. So in an established organization, so if you're starting up with a brand new team, you're kind of growing with them and it's easier for you to coach them, right? Now, if you're coming fresh to join a team that's already been established, that's been doing things a certain way, how do you kind of break those barriers and really start introducing that concept of Agile Mindset?
That's a great question. Honestly, personally, that's where I leverage the heart of Agile, because it breaks it down so simple to 4 words. Everybody understands what collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve means. And I've done sessions with teams where we go into and just take each one of those and go, okay, let's just brainstorm. What does it mean to collaborate? Like, as a team, what does it mean for us to collaborate now? And I encourage them to think about collaborating as a team and with other teams. And so it's just getting them to think about what those words mean and how they can bring those to life in the way they work within their team. And I've seen teams like just having an hour session where we take 15 minutes for each of those 4 quadrants, where it just unlocks a completely different way of thinking about their work. Because they realize, oh, wait, we don't collaborate with other teams. Like, when we know that someone is dependent on us, like, we don't always reach out to them proactively, or if we know someone, like, we're dependent on them, like, a lot of times we don't let them know ahead of time when we need something, and then in the sprint when we need it, we don't have it, and we get stuck. And it just helps them to start thinking about the ways they're working and how to apply that. So for me, that tool has been the most effective for me. But again, I'm pretty close to that one as well.
That is awesome. And also, I think it's a good segue into kind of having or revisiting team agreements as well, right? Just
Yes.
That's something that we need to do on a regular cadence. So I think introducing the heart of Agile, for example, as one of the tools as part of maybe that session might help, right? Because you're
absolutely.
not saying we got to change the way we're doing things, right? It's more of, hey, let's explore this option and see how it's really help us as a team figure out how we want to work with each other.
Whenever we add a new person to a team, or if we shuffle teams around a little bit for some reason, we always do team resets. And when I'm leading them, we always use the Heart of Agile exercise as part of that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Question?
Yeah, Michael.
I might have missed it. Is that tool available for us to play with, or is that a personal thing you keep in your back pocket?
So this tool, it's because of the security setup we have on our Miro instance, I can't export the template to share out to people, but I put in the chat, I'm happy to publish a PDF of this that I can share out. And if you want to recreate it in any way, feel free to do that. I've talked to Xero. They are fine with me sharing this out, as it's something that we've just created as a tool to use. It's not something we're looking to make any kind of money off of or anything. We just want to share the tools out to help other people.
Really appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to get that to Lori and Shruti so that we can get that sent out to everybody who was in the call.
Well, I'm for sure going to charge every time I use it. So
yeah, there you go.
You can tell Xero that I'm getting a little kickback, every $4.95 per use or something like that. Oh, how much fun is that? Thanks so much. What a great way to kind of frame some discussion, and narrow down to some good framework advice. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here and for contributing and being present. I see a lot of new folks that I haven't seen before. If this is your first time coming out, I'm really hoping that you got some value from this and you will continue to participate. We got so much great content coming at you every single month. It's like the fight club of meetups. There's, everybody has a different night or a different SIG they want to go to, and we can argue over which ones belong to us, but there's always going to be something for you to do. There's always going to be something, a different flavor or a different topic. So, please diversify with that and reach out if you have any, other questions, or you just need to get connected or engaged more. Appreciate y'all.
And looking forward to seeing you guys at our upcoming meetups. And we'll be sure to post it both on meetup.com as well as our LinkedIn and Slack and our other social media platforms as well.